Today we're going to be doing a crayfish dissection. And a crayfish is an arthropod. Arthro meaning joint, and pod meaning foot or appendage. An appendage is anything that comes off the main body. So antennas are appendages, legs are appendages. To have jointed appendages is a big asset. It increases flexibility and reduces the amount of energy you have to put forth in order to move. So it's an evolutionary step forward. Most arthropods have 2 to 3 body regions: a head, a thorax, and an abdomen. You can see that I'm moving the abdomen relative to the thorax. And when I try to move the head on the thorax, this joint doesn't move. This joint is actually fused together. Through evolution, it became fused together, which increases the stability of this region. When the head and thorax are fused together, we're going to call that a cephalothorax. Cephalo meaning head. Let's take a look at the underside of this organism. So if I turn it over, I see these large front legs right here, these claws, which are actually called chelipeds, and they are used to catch prey and also to defend themselves for protective purposes. The next set of legs are referred to as walking legs, and you can easily see that they are jointed. These are used for walking. The smaller set of legs back here are called swimmerets, and these swimmerets are actually used for reproduction. They're actually going to be used to move sperm and egg during reproduction. Now, I've got 2 crayfish here, and you can see the obvious size difference between the two. The larger crayfish is going to be a male, and the smaller ones are typically females. Also, if we took a look at the swimmerets, the first pair of swimmerets right here, you can see that these 2 swimmerets right here are very long and tube-like. That's indicative of a male. Where these swimmerets are over here, the first pair here, are shorter and they're more hair-like. And that's indicative of a female. Now, let's go ahead and take a look at the mouth and the anus. The crayfish has a complete reproductive system. A complete digestive tract. That means they have a mouth at one end, and we can see that right here. Let's take a look at the mouth. So if we go over here, and we go just below these mandibles here, right here, I can actually put the probe in there, and that is the mouth, right in there. If we go to the other end, we're going to be looking for the anus. So I'm going to go down near the very end, the very posterior aspect of the tail, and you can see, you can find a small hole right there. And that small hole is the anus. So this organism has a complete digestive tract, or a one-way digestive tract, meaning food normally moves in one direction, from mouth to anus. Now let's go ahead and begin the dissection. What I want you to do is to begin cutting the exoskeleton. Now the exoskeleton is made of chitin, which is a sugary macromolecule. And I want you to begin cutting way down here near the tail. And notice the blade of my scissors right here. I want the blade parallel with the exoskeleton. So when I cut up the exoskeleton, cut up through the exoskeleton, I don't want the blade angled down because that will tear up the muscles and it's going to tear up the organ. So I want that blade rather parallel. I want it just underneath the exoskeleton. And small snips are going to do the trick. So very small snips, and I'm going to continue all the way up until I get between the eyes. So all the way up until I get between the eyes. Almost all the way between the eyes. And then what I'm going to do is gently peel back the exoskeleton. So let's go ahead and peel back the exoskeleton. And you're going to have to do this very carefully. Reason is, the muscles are actually attached to the exoskeleton. And if we pull them back too quickly, we will tear the muscles. So I'm going to sometimes put the probe in here and try to release some of those muscles from the exoskeleton and then pull it open gently. There we go. And I'm pulling off the exoskeleton on this side. And you can actually see some of the muscles that are attached here to the inside of the exoskeleton. Those are some of the muscle attachment points. I'm going to pull this right off. And then you can see these light feathery structures right here. They're very feathery. These are actually the gills. The gills are underneath the exoskeleton for protection, obviously, and the water circulates underneath that exoskeleton. Now, the water's not going to circulate very well under that exoskeleton. So what nature did was, nature actually attached the gills to the walking legs. So as I move the legs, this would occur much better in an actual living organism, the gills are going to move. The gills are going to sweep through the water. And by moving the legs, the gills sweep through the water, and that increases the contact between the water and the gills, and that increases gas exchange. And you see they're very light and feathery. That feathery appearance actually increases surface area. And whenever diffusion is involved, such as gas exchange, we need lots and lots of surface area. Nature's going to find a way to increase the surface area. So let's take a closer look at these gills. You can see how fluffy they are, how feathery they are. And again, they're attached to the legs, so as the gill, every time this creature takes a step, the gill actually sweeps through the water. Now let's go ahead and continue removing the exoskeleton. So again, we want to be very careful with this, because we don't want to rip up any of the organs. I'm going to pull that right off. And I'm also going to do the same down here for the abdomen. I'm going to try to gently remove the exoskeleton. You can see that there's lots of muscle inside the tail. If you've ever eaten a crayfish, this is what you're going to be eating, the muscle within the tail, within the abdominal region. Now as I pull that back, I want to expose the muscle there, and I'm going to try to show a bit of a close-up here. And you can see this muscle right here. This is all muscle. And sitting right in the middle of that muscle is this pipe, this tube. And this tube is the intestine. And this tube dives through here and eventually becomes, the opening to this tube is going to be the anus. So that is the intestine. Now let's move up a little bit further and take a look at some of the other parts here. I'm going to go ahead and remove just a little bit more of that exoskeleton so I can get in here. There we go. And let's take a look at some of these. Here's the gills on the other side. Here's the gills on this side. And if I pull this back, and we're very lucky here, you can actually see the heart. So this structure right here is going to be the heart. So let's see if I can make that a little bit closer. And I will point to the heart right here. Now there's little holes in this heart called ostia. And these holes are where the blood actually enters and leaves the heart. Actually, I think it's where the blood actually enters the heart. And this has an open circulatory system, so the blood actually leaves the heart and the blood vessels temporarily, circulates around the organs, and then returns to the blood vessels. So it's an open circulatory system. Now if we look in and around that heart, I'm going to pull this back just a little bit. On either side of the heart, we see these cream-colored structures right here. These cream-colored structures are going to be gonads. Now this large crayfish here is a male, so this would be the testes. If this was a female, then this structure would be an ovary, but that's going to be a testes right there. Now we've got some other cream-colored structures a little bit more anterior to that, right here. We see it right here, and we see those cream-colored structures on the other side. This one got torn off just a little bit, but you can see it right there. There it is right there. That's going to be digestive gland. So we can see it right here. That is the digestive gland. So the digestive gland is going to be a little bit more anterior, and the gonad is going to be a little bit more posterior. Now sitting in between the digestive glands is going to be this region right here. And this region right here is all stomach. Now if we take a look inside this stomach, we should see teeth. There's actually going to be a couple sets of teeth inside this stomach. So I'm going to pull this back and see if we can get a good clear shot of the teeth. And there's some teeth right here. We can see that row of teeth right there. And we're going to have one just opposite it, right on the other side. If I can open that up. And there they are right there. Another set of teeth. Now what I'm going to gently do is remove the stomach. So I'm going to try to gently remove the stomach without tearing other tissue. I'm just going to kind of pinch it and pull it away. Take a good look at those teeth inside there. Now, I've removed the stomach, and we can see inside here, I see two very thin white, look like threads. This is part of the nerve cord. Nerve cord is essentially a primitive spinal cord. That's the nerve cord. And where the nerve cord comes together at the anterior part right here, where it comes together, that's going to be the brain. Very small. Right there, that's the brain. Now just underneath the nerve cord, and I'm going to tease them up. There's one right there. And here's one on the other side, right there. Those are the green glands, or antennal glands, because they're near the antenna. These are actually primitive kidneys. And their job is to remove metabolic waste and also get rid of excess water. That's their job. Now what I want to do is go back to the abdomen again. And this time I'm going to take the exoskeleton, and I'm going to kind of flip this crayfish upside down, and I'm going to pull the muscle away from the exoskeleton. I'm going to pull it away so I can see underneath this muscle, and you want to do this very, very delicately. So here I am pulling the muscle away from the exoskeleton. And what I want to do is look within that muscle, right in here. And usually you're going to see a thin thread, a thin white thread. Now I don't see one right here. That thin white thread would be the nerve cord, but I know this guy has a nerve cord. So I just got to, where is it? So it's probably, it got removed from here when I pulled this back, and I'm going to look for it right here on the surface of the exoskeleton. So there we are, and take a look at that right there, that thin white cord right there. That is going to be the nerve cord, similar to your spinal cord. There it is. And when it gets more anterior, it's actually going to divide in two and then eventually come back together again and form the brain. And that's going to be it for the crayfish dissection.